What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are live right now on CannaBuzz, and if you're joining us on YouTube or Spotify, thank you so much for joining us. We have a great episode for you today. We are going to be talking all about soil. So the first half of the show, we're talking about soil. So if you want to nerd out about soil, stay tuned for that. And then we're also going to be talking about what it's like to work in the industry and what it's like to work in sales in the industry and things like that. So JR's got a great episode kind of put together for you with two great guests. But before we get too into it, I'm going to throw it over to JR to make a special moment shout out.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little shout out to my niece, Nicole Rose. She passed this Thursday, and she was like the bridge in our family that kind of kept a lot of us disjointed folks together in communications and stuff. So her loss to our family is going to be massive. But I just want to give some shout out and some growers love to Nicole Rose.
Thanks, JR. Sorry for your loss. Tough to follow that up, but we've got a great show for you guys. First off, shout out to everyone in the CannaBuzz community. If you enjoy our episodes and you want to support our community and help the podcast keep going, you can join our members only community. You can download the CannaBuzz app from the App Store or go to cannabuzz.app in your browser and use the code BUZZ for your first month free. You can join it for as little as $4.20 a month, and your support is really helpful. It helps JR go to events like the Dude Grows Cup or the Emerald Cup, things like that. So we really appreciate it. Also, shout out to Lost Coast Plant Therapy. If you need an organic IPM spray to help take down things that are trying to take your plants down, check out lostcoastplanttherapy.com. And huge shout out to Dirk for supporting the show. And then last shout out from my end before I throw it over to JR for his shout outs. We're going to shout out sacred3mushrooms.com. If you want to grow your own mushrooms at home, you can go to sacred3mushrooms.com. They've got a kit that has everything you need, the substrate, everything, and instructional videos, all on sacred3mushrooms.com, and use the code CannaBuzz for a discount. And then I'll throw it over to JR.
Thanks, Q. Today we're going to do our Tiki announcements. He still has a Hyperchrome Panther runts, which is a limited breeding project that he did, only 300 packs available. And that's Y8 by Lemon Cherry Sherbert. And then also we're going to shout out that blue marker, permanent marker by Blue Slushies, is hot on Brad's site right now at rawgenetics.io.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the official intro that JR has written for the episode today. Today, we are very fortunate to have Scott from First Horticulture and Chris from Country Root Soil. Today, we're going to be talking about soil sales and pivoting in the cannabis industry. Cannabis is always making you pivot, that's for sure. Please welcome Scott and Chris to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on, gentlemen. And so because both of you are new to the show, we always like to ask our guests how they fell in love with the plant and how the plant's kind of gotten them where they are today. And so, Scott, I'll go ahead and let you start with that one. And then, Chris, if you could go ahead and answer after that.
Well, I guess I fell in love with the plant in high school, like most other people. As a kid, I was very active in sports and stuff. So there's always natural body pains and aches. And, it always seemed to be one of those things that helped. And, it just continued to work as life went on. It became more than a hobby. Let's say, I became a, underground outdoor grower, some other things. And, it was more or less always trying to hold on to the genetic and keep it, you didn't want to lose it, didn't know who made it, back in the day. And, a few years later, I had a very ill girlfriend, and, the search for CBD and the almighty medicine started happening, working with different oils, different compounds, different plants, breeding. And as everything started becoming medically recognized in Michigan, where I'm from, it pursued into starting to search out and find equipment. Now let's, as everything's opening up, there's always the standard supplier, Sunlight and Hydro Farm, but we're looking for different ways to supply and always try to find things cheaper, essentially. And, ever since then, I always navigated down the lighting world. And I mean, my love for the plant's enormous. I've consulted and worked with lots of different people, lots of groups, lots of award winners, a lot of people trying to do good with the plant. One of the groups I used to work with was one of the largest pediatric groups in the country, all by donation. So, I've the plant's taken me down a lot of ways. And, for me, the picks and shovels has always been where I found myself be more useful to other growers. And with all the contacts and everyone I've met over the years working in the industry, I decided to open up my own business, First Horticulture. And it was always a passion. A lot of my past that people might know of me was my passion for organic farming. And working down that, chased down a lot of different avenues, worked with different companies, worked with bottled organic nutrients. And, I always ended up navigating back towards lighting. Well, now Farm First, we got our own powdered organic line, as well as a 3-part salt, like many of the other guys. But it's all about having great quality products, good quality inputs for a great quality output. That's the way I look at it. And that's what I essentially try to deliver to my customers, as well as great, outstanding service.
Nice. Excellent. That's good. That's good. We need folks like you making sure we get the good deals out there and that we're on the cutting edge of like lighting and the industry, what the industry has to offer.
Lots of Chris screens out there.
Yeah. Word. Bro, don't trigger me. Don't trigger me about these LED guys. Anyways, Chris, go ahead and tell us about your journey and how you fell in love with the plant and how it got you where you are today.
Yeah, I also fell in love with this plant early on in high school. Was very drawn to it. I was a skateboarder, snowboarder. And, back in the 90s, skateboarders, snowboarders was like a variety of age groups. I was kind of a young guy, but I hung out with some older cats that were kind of teaching us the ropes on the skateboarding and stuff. Met some guys who were blowing glass and stuff like that early on and, was skateboarding with these guys and, had a lot of fun with the plant back in the early days. Started growing the plant, in the woods as most people did back then. We would find some different CannaBuzz strains that we had, we're going around. If we were lucky enough to find a seed in them, we'd pop them suckers off in the woods in various places, me and a couple of buddies of mine. I always laugh because back then we were so nervous about even going in the woods that the three of us wouldn't even walk in the woods together. Like we would be like, one would go in and one would have to go around the corner and go in from a different angle. And,
are you also from Michigan? Sorry.
Yes, I am. Yep. I'm
so
how
my question always is, how do you guys pull off outdoor in Michigan?
Get her done early.
Go ahead,
well,
Chris.
I would say when I was young, I didn't really know that well. I'll say that. We were pulling plants early. Now that I know what I'm doing and when I got more experience with the plant, looking back, I was pulling them probably 3 weeks early, to be honest with you. When I was younger, we thought that if they had red hairs on them, they were done. Just simply seeing the white hairs turn to red and start to go brown, we thought it was done. Like we didn't know to look at the trichomes and things like that. And so we were looking like solely on the hairs and we were getting lighter, looser buds, but they still tasted good and, we enjoyed them. But certainly we were pulling them a little bit early. But yeah, it's been an interesting, ride and circle for me, being an early on stoner and, had some troubles in school and things like that. And ended up, by the time I was 21, I was working at a factory out of high school and I just didn't want to do the factory life. People were pushing me to go to college. And so at 21, I started college and was trying to do something different for my life and trying to, get a career path going. And in college, I finished my bachelor's degree in 2008, and that's when they legalized cannabis here in Michigan. and cannabis was legal in Colorado at the time. But it wasn't that legal in Michigan. In the beginning couple years, it was like roughly legal. And and so I moved to Colorado. Actually, I decided I wanted to go and live in a state that had much more freedom. And so in 2009, I moved out to Colorado and met some growers out there and some cultivators out there, and was able to kind of see, an advance. Michigan wasn't quite that far along. There was obviously people doing it, but in Colorado in 2009, it was booming. That was when there were hundreds of dispensaries all the way through Denver, and a lot of home growers and things like that. So I went out there for a couple of years, came back here in 2011, and basically been taken off with my career. But the interesting part is with legalization, and I was in school to be a geologist, and so I was studying soils and the environment, and legalization hit, and a lot of my friends were like, you should take that knowledge and apply it, in the soil industry for cannabis.
Word.
And so slowly started making my way there. And, it's this revolution of this life that I've been on, and this journey that I've been on. And, I'm very grateful for where it's brought me today. No doubt about it. It's carried me a long ways through my life. And I would have never expected that, I got a full legitimate career consulting with, some of the biggest growers in the state, some of the best growers, around, period. I got, get the privilege to work with a variety of people. So, quite an experience.
Yeah. So going to school, you were actually able to take a skill set that actually translated into a career or, a future. And so for a lot of kids that go to school, it's not always the case. So, congratulations on getting something for your money. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
good.
It helped me with my computer skills and things like that to be able to work programs. Business requires you to be pretty decent at computers, which I'm sure you guys can relate to. You've had to learn more than you anticipated as well. So it gave me that edge and the confidence that, I knew how to navigate things. And, out of school, I was like, all right, we could do this.
Yeah, you have to be flexible and teach yourself, pick things up quickly. Well, we'd love to learn more about both of your guys' companies that you're with. We had First Horticulture with Scott, and then Chris with Country Roots Soil. So I don't know. Let's see. We'll go with Chris first this time, and then we'll go to Scott.
So started Country Roots Soils. Started as a natural farming company overall. I didn't start as a soil business. Being that I'm, into soil and water health and environmental health, I started off as like a natural farming company. And so we were doing the liquid inputs and consulting people on, building out their grows. And I was doing a bunch of soil and water analysis and giving people readings of their soil and helping them, dial in different mineral inputs and things like that. That was the first couple of years of my business. And I actually didn't really want to be a soil company per se, as a sense of like mixing a bunch of soils and running and working all these, soils from start to finish myself. I was repping for another company and selling their soils. But I noticed some gaps in the soils. I got sick of I'm really into the regenerative soil, living soils, and a lot of companies, even organic soils, are selling these really dry powder-based soils that are kind of difficult to work with. I wasn't able to get continuous multiple grows out of them the way I wanted to. And so I just readily started, thinking of ways to make soil better. And that's when I started my journey down to being a soil company. And that's when that company kicked me to the curb because they didn't want to make the soil that I wanted. And they said, you either sell our soil or we're not going to sell you anything. And so I had to come up with my own soil company at that point. And been riding it since, but we've been blending soils for about 6 years now and just continuously evolving through the years as we go.
Well, we have a lot of questions about that coming up here, because I do have a lot of questions for that. But Scott, go ahead and tell us about First Horticulture.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I came through the industry mostly in the lighting game, but I always worked on my own recipes and worked on organic farming. And as I navigated my way through this game, working with one of the formulators I worked with, we came up with what the organic line is for First Horticulture. 1 part organic veg, 1 part organic flower, an organic 700 cal mag, and then I have a carbo to help boost that plant, get that girth on that flower, a kelp, and an all powdered silica, which has got us really excited. It's fairly new. The technology that we're using to derive it, it's all organic plant derived silica. So there's really nothing else like it out there yet. The nice thing is it goes very far. So it's about time, there's a efficient, inexpensive silica that's going to be on the market, and this one is powder, so we're not shipping water. So we're very excited about that. To keep up with the culture, we do have a 3-part salt line, veg and flower with works with the same base. We work with the same carbo in that line as well to complement that. And if you want to use the silica as well, so you can intermingle my salt and inorganic products with the organic products if you want to run more of a synganic type approach. Like I work tightly with Chris and other soil manufacturers because we feel there's obviously the synergistic relationship, but there's even more of a relationship when we know exactly what the inputs are going, and we can work on making sure that the nutrients we're pouring on top are equaling what we need to going into the base.
Yeah, because
there's the boss.
That's right. He's calling all the shots.
Yeah,
don't mistake that.
For
Don't
the
mistake that.
audio listeners, if they heard a baby randomly, that's what that was. My son. But yeah, sorry guys to jump in. That's the special guest.
Nice. Well, Scott, one of the things I think's kind of cool is that even a lot of the traditionally salt guys are kind of leaning towards a synganic approach by putting some organic biostimulants or some micro packages in with their stuff. But Chris, you have basically, from what I could see, it looks basically like it's kind of like a modified Coots mix. And so there's a lot of biology and stuff already kind of packed in to the country roots.
Yeah, correct. I overall like to, work out of a pretty nutrient dense soil, and let the plants kind of do their thing from there. And so the first soil that I did was our original living soil mix. That was a mix that I wanted to purposely be able to run in larger pots and beds, indoors or out, to get multiple generations of growth out of that soil. So that was the first soil that we did. And then I also have a gold blend that I call, which is a 50-50 peat and cocoa blend with also worm castings and minerals. So it's another super soil type, but not quite as dense as my living soil. And then we are also now just released a hot cocoa blend that's 100% cocoa core with our vermicompost and very mineral and nutrient dense as well. But you get more aeration and more drainage out of there. And, Scott and I talking about various programs and recognizing that, growers like to grow a variety of ways, and they like to use a variety of techniques and things. And some people are, changing it up every 6 months or every year or so, and trying new things out. And so that's where, some of these more fluid options come in, like the hot cocoa blend that, has a higher drainage. It'll work really well for people wanting to use various synganic approaches and things like that, or full organics, or just ride it out. People are doing sub-irrigation planting methods. That cocoa blend also is really good for programs like that. And so rather than trying to force the gardener down a particular path, we want to stay open for the gardener to try to guide them through the experience that they're looking for. And so
I like that, really. Honestly,
diversifying myself.
I like that because, like you said, not everybody has the ability to do a certain style a certain way. Not only maybe not with just their own character and who they are as a person. Like I'm a soil farmer. I like to be dirty. I grew up in a swamp. It's me. There's guys who live in like hydro that's like, fucking sterile, nearly sterile rooms and shit. And so I think for you guys to be able to offer, a little something for, everybody and everyone in between is kind of cool. I've started doing the living soil Coots blend, but I've been adding one bag of Tupper for every 25 gallons of Coots mix that I do, because I was having problems. What I felt like was really dense. The mix seems super dense, and everyone is saying rice holes are almost impossible to get clean. And so a lot of people have moved over to the pumice.
Yep.
For us here in the Northwest, it's, really convenient. But I still feel like it was kind of dense.
You had wet roots, wet feet.
I just felt like, I'm so used to living out of bag soil,
Right.
that I expect a certain amount of aeration in the soil,
Yep.
and I like having a lot of surface area for microbes to set up shop and
Yep.
and start doing their thing as well. And so I feel like, after I did my Coots mix, it seemed like everything was pretty dense. And so I kind of cut out the fine pumice and I'm just going to be doing the medium now. But how do you guys kind of approach that aeration thing in your living soil offerings?
It's a little bit different. Like for the beds, you don't really need high aeration for people to do beds. Like you still want aeration in there. I use rice hulls and pumice, and then I even got some wood in my soils. But it's a big management of water, especially for the denser soils. I try to, not ever overwater them if I can avoid it. But I also try to get myself on a water pattern where I'm not going to have to water, but every 2-3 days. And so it's a different type of a watering regimen in those denser soils versus like the cocoa soil that we work with. It's a lot more coarser, the cocoa and the perlite. They don't compact together quite as tight as like peat and the compost do. So it just makes an overall coarser type of a soil. So one thing with, if you're playing with a Coots blend, you can substitute some of that peat for cocoa. The only thing with cocoa is it's higher pH than peat typically. So if you're using a lot of cocoa, you're going to have to probably put a little bit of sulfur in there to try to get that pH down a little bit. So there's just a little tip, but that can help get a little more aeration out of your soil if you're blending up yourself.
Good tip.
Really good tip.
Yeah, thanks for covering that.
Like the biggest problem with a lot of people that are using living beds is, they're getting compacted. And, a lot of these mixes, we can put any, 6 weeks charge into these soils, 4 to 6 weeks. And, it's, we got to be careful about letting it compact. And, so the hot cocoa was, honestly, that was a thought. Well, Chris and I were burning our feet up while we were in Colombia on a project. Stand next to a pool with our feet burning up. But yeah, the hot cocoa idea, eliminates the fact that we're going to have that harder compression in the living beds.
Yeah, so I've incorporated more cocoa into my living soils as I've done these experiments too. So it's a good fiber to work with.
And so sourcing cocoa is obviously something that's super important. Do you have any good recommendation and tips for people who are trying to source cocoa out there?
Call me.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
That's one of the things,
everything is rebranded. Every state has stuff rebranded and for the most part. So things are often rebranded in various states. So it's hard to say. Those briquettes that you get, those are a pain, but you got to soak them well. If you get yourself a tote and put some water in there and put that briquette in there and then flip it over, it'll double, triple its size and break up there. Those are usually pretty good. The blocks.
The cocoa we are using is RHP certified, very clean, very low EC.
Well, I know, when it comes to importing stuff like cocoa, there's only a few avenues that it gets here by. Shout out to Neem Ninja. And so I think one of the things that people have is they have these bag options, like, a can of cocoa or like whatever, other guys' stuff is. But then, like you said, they have these bricks that they got to work with. Do you think paying a little extra money to get something that's already, been washed and already charged with a little mag or cow mag or something like that is worth paying a little more for?
I do. I mean, one of the things that we're working towards is having 1, 2, and 3 gallon ready to go bags for the guys that want to just put their clones in it and go for the speed of it. Whereas breaking apart, a hard coir block, which requires a coir breaker or a lot of wet patience, soaking them out, breaking it apart, or even, the cocoa bags, that come with the compressed blocks in them. Those don't necessarily break apart very easily either. I've had my experience with all of them. And, a matter of, even if you soak those blocks, you still got to break up that bottom because it's still got that compressed square in the bottom. Those roots will not penetrate into that. They're going to go the least, easiest resistance, to follow the water. So if, that stuff's not broken up. So pretty soon we'll have 1, 2, 3 gallon bags available of cocoa and the hot cocoa and other mixes available that Chris offers, especially locally here in Detroit and in the Michigan area. But hopefully, we'll get some distributors and we'll get out farther.
Well, on that topic, actually, what are the challenges to scaling up this sort of business? I've seen, just from being in the industry, so to speak, for the last several years and following people on the soil side of things, it seems like it's a tricky business. I'm sure it's not simple to mix up a bunch of soil. So what are the challenges to scaling a business like this?
Keeping up with materials is fairly difficult. Obviously, when I buy materials, I have to buy like a half a semi load at a time, basically, at least. So, and then I'm working with over 50 different soil amendments: peat, cocoa, perlite, pumice. So there's just a lot of things that I have to buy, and none of them come from the same areas. They all come from different sources. And so learning to source your materials is a big part of the game. And it has been hard to scale up in this industry where it's been a roller coaster ride, you know what I mean? And it's been on the down for the last couple of years across the country as a whole, for the most part, as far as I can tell. And so riding that out has been interesting. And, I'm on the process of trying to scale myself up, quite frankly, still. So we've had continuous growth year after year after year. So that's something that I'm very proud of. And we got a great reputation in the state of Michigan. And so that's something that I worked hard to get.
Yeah, a lot to be said for that, because in this community and industry, the turds kind of float to the top after time. And so for you to be in it this long and still doing very well, that speaks a lot to your dedication to your craft. One thing I wanted to talk about is the regionality in soil blending. Like, I know if you're trying to blend stuff on the East Coast, your access to, say, forested materials might be completely different than something you're accessing over in Northern California. Can you kind of speak to the regionality of soil blending?
Yeah. Like peat, for example, we can get peat here in Michigan. There are peat bogs in Michigan. Not every state's going to have peat bogs that they can mine from. And so overall, just your resources around are going to vary. Your wood chips and things like that, species of wood. So each state's going to have its own materials. But when I'm working with people in another state, I do ask them, what kind of materials do you have around? Is there something that you really like? Is there some things that you like to use or that got a good reputation? And we can kind of help build up from there too. But it does vary, and materials are not quite all the same. Like we were talking about with the cocoa, if you're sourcing a cocoa, you want to try to find a clean cocoa. Try to find a company that has advertised that this has good growing points to it. And as with all your medias, you want to ask about heavy metals and different testings and things. If you're it's best to see that the provider has confidence in what they're working with if you can get that out of them.
And so is there like R&D on your side of things when you're building these batches or changing amendments to make sure that, people aren't going to have issues passing tests?
Yeah, I have to test my stuff a couple times a year to make sure that nothing is changing too much, and if especially if like I have to change some of my amendments and things like that, then I got to retest it to check out where I'm at. But it's another thing that I've paid very close attention to, and we've helped grow thousands of plants across the state of Michigan, and I haven't had not one operator tell me that they failed metals testing. That comes from my geology background, that I'm familiar with what natural background levels of these elements are in nature. And so I've tuned myself in to recognize if there's a spike. And if there's a spike, you either can't use it or you got to dilute the shit out of it and retest it and see if if you diluted it enough, it's not a problem.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
Well, Chris, we kind of, one of the things that you see when online, when you see people talking about soil, you'll see complaints about brands every once in a while where people will say, I got fungus gnats from that soil or whatever it is, And so what kind of things do you have to do to make sure that your soil isn't the one that brings the fungus gnats or whatever random stuff along with it?
Yeah, fungus gnats are soil builders. It's one of our good friends, I guess. I do a lot to try to avoid fungus gnats. Number one is to bake the soil. I don't just mix a soil and bag it right up and put it out there for people. I have soil boxes. And so after I mix the soil, it sits in a soil box for a period of time and goes through a proper cooking process before I bag it. I also treat it with different biologies and things like that to try to limit that, limit the bug growth in there. But overall, the heat process and the composting process, and another thing that I do is I don't get too far ahead on my bagging. Some companies are getting ahead, like they're like bagging, next year's soils now, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And so those bagged soils sit around for a long time, and then they can get fungus gnats in them by just sitting around too. So if I've had bags sitting around longer than a couple of months, I'm calling somebody up and giving them a discount, like come get these, because I just don't want to sell something that's been bagged up, for months on end or even a year, So, I try to be careful with these strategies, but shit happens too,
Yeah, well, go ahead, Scott.
I'm down at the warehouse all the time, and our cocoa warehouse, it's at any time it's there's 10,000 square feet full of pallets full of cocoa. 70-30, straight, 50-50. And we don't have any fungus gnats flying around our shop, and that's one of the nice things that, we keep everything clean. We keep it all indoors. So that's one of the things that we do pride ourselves on, is taking care of the product before it gets to the customer. So, what happens between the warehouse on a truck, get parked in over puddles, and, who knows what happens. But, as we all know, shit happens between A and B.
Yeah, we always tell people to be, kind of buyer beware of the shop you go to. If they
Absolutely. The hydro stores are the dirtiest places they could go.
Yeah. If they store all their stuff.
If they have a plant in the window, peek through that window. Watch, look for spider mites. I bet it's covered in them. I have not seen really a hydro store that wasn't covered in them over all the years of all the stores I've walked through.
Yeah, and if they store their soil outside, that should be an immediate red flag for you to hit the gas and go somewhere else. One thing I have issue with, why I have you here, Chris, for my own selfish reasons, when I'm transplanting into my living soil, there seems to be this kind of 10 to 2 week window, 10-day to 2 week window where my nutrient exchanges aren't really picking up right away, and I'm having some mag deficiencies, and I don't know if it's lack of calcium that's be an uptake that's causing the mag issue or what, but can you kind of help me out, brother?
Yeah, so like if you're cloning like in a hydroponic system or even like the root riot cloning procedures, I do notice sometimes like if they got good, strong, healthy roots and the cloning process went effortlessly, you know what I mean? Like you got good roots in a week and they're still looking nice, healthy shoots. Generally, those take to the soil a lot better. But if there's any sort of a lag in the cloning process, then you plant it to the soil. And you're right. I do notice that sometimes it takes a little bit for them to, transition from that environment and to take off. And in the beginning, when they take off, they can have a little lighter color in the centers of the leaves sometimes. So sometimes it is a matter of patience and not trying to over push them too much. I work heavily on a tea program, so I might, once I know they're rooted, I'll, try to hit them with a little micro tea to kind of just get things kind of popping a little bit more for them. That generally helps me a lot, but patience overall. And I tell people too to over clone, and that way, you can clone them and then root them in soil in like a solo cup or just like a quart of soil. And that way, if a couple of them die, it's not a huge loss on you. But
Yeah.
I very much try to overclone and take the healthiest rooters.
Well, I want to get in.
Saying that from when you go from cup to your bed, you're having that issue.
I go from arrow cloner into 2-gal, 2-gal into 15-gal. And I'm noticing when I'm going out of the arrow cloner into the 2-gal, with that first 10-day, 2-week window, they're not. Yeah. So what about, would you do any recommendations or make any recommendations about a foliar during that time to kind of help them stay healthy while they're transitioning and starting their, magic with the microbes and nutrient exchanges?
In terms of an everyday market, just a little bit of like a calcium foliar. You could do like, Scott has these soluble calcium and silica powders. There's a variety of those on the market. But I think getting some calcium on those leaves will help them, jump that photosynthesis process, up again. So something light like that, though, like a light little microbe type of substance or like a calcium silica type of substance, or there's some other type. Castor bean Organics Alive makes a castor bean foliar that it's a nice foliar.
Nice. So I've been thinking about maybe doing that.
Definitely, I do calcium foliars quite a bit. I got a gypsum that I really like to use and elastinite, and so I go back and forth between those two minerals, but it's just a powder substance. And, I'll put some of that in my sprayer and just spray a little extra calcium at them. Like you say, right after that transplant period, sometime, a couple days after I've transplanted, I like to hit them with a beneficial foliar to kind of help them through.
Nice. Love it.
I do too. And I like you said, I spray them with my 700 CalMag.
Nice.
Epsom salts. People do Epsom foliars. I haven't done those so much over the years in the recent years, but it's still beneficial.
While we're hanging out in this kind of like grower tip part of the show, another question we had was, what teas or amendments do you guys recommend for veg and flower to boost nutrient delivery cycling?
Uptake. Stuff for uptake. So humic, fulvic acids, basically, if you're doing a tea, a lot of people, lean towards worm castings and molasses, teas, things like that. Definitely, one of the things I'm working on currently is a humic fulvic acid package that's going to be dry. And that's the hardest thing, is micronizing and getting this package to work together properly. But, that's one of the most important parts of the plant there, and a lot of that, I have a lot of it built into the base nutrients, the organic base nutrients, has some of that built in, but there's definitely, I'd like to have a supplemental for that. On Chris's website, he has, all the amendments and more that have been discussed and mentioned here are all available in organic forms on the Country Roots website. And, you can go on there. There's also, Chris has designed and has many different top dress formulas for all the guys that are doing organic beds or outdoors, or even indoors, for your 15-gallon pots there. If you're seeing a little, at the end, you could throw a little bit of that flour dust on top of there.
Yeah, I'll give
I
you
like
guys I'll give you guys a tip too, is a lot of people are running straight worm casting or compost teas, and that is good because you could get good beneficial microorganisms out of straight compost, and you can even get some nutrients. But most compost and even vermicompost is very, very low in calcium per se. And then a lot of them are really high in phosphates, but they may or may not be high in potassium. So I do like these supercharged compost teas. I try to look at organic gardening similar to the synthetic gardening, where I'm trying to nutrient steer, what I'm doing. And so I supercharge my teas with, 15 different soil building amendments that are fairly soluble into my compost. And that way I can get a lot more nutrient pack and microdiversity out of those teas. And so I like working with teas like that. But even if you are just using, a regular compost or worm castings or something, one thing I would highly recommend is getting a good soluble gypsum or calcium source in there, because feeding the teas without the calcium, eventually, the bones are going to weaken either way. So that is calcium is something that, I notice is the biggest staple of my regenerative gardening program, is trying to just keep a constant flow of calcium along with other nutrients. And then once they hit the bloom time, then you want to pick up the PKs, but you're still feeding them the calcium.
Yeah, it's a dance. So with the teas and the amendment blends, will you have recipes on the site for people to follow so that they can kind of put together some of these resources and amendments for tea packages?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been slacking on putting too much recipes. I got information on, how I work my program and a feeding program. And I'm very open on, what I do with all of my different blends and things like that. But I don't have specific instructions for people to necessarily create their own teas or mineral blends. Because part of I'm selling my own, but I am an educator, and I do want to get more of that type of information up there eventually. Just, good pointers for people.
Yeah, appreciate it. I mean, we always need resources from folks who, aren't pushing the bro science, bro.
Yes.
I mean, Chris has some literature he's put together that spotlight how to use all his different things. Just no specifics on, like a schedule or anything.
No, I do got a schedule, but my actual recipes, I guess I have to be a little careful about what I say about all my recipes, because hey, I got a lot of competitors, and I got people trying to take slices of my business every day.
Oh yeah.
I'd love to help out all the growers. That ain't my problem at all. It's the people that are trying to get a piece of what I got going on that gets a little tough sometimes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, on the note of kind of market share and things like that, we've noticed, you kind of were talking about it earlier, Chris, I think, about just the industry overall has been kind of in a state of flux. I mean, it's always in a state of flux, it seems like, but especially the last couple of years have been not been easy, right, in the industry. And on the grow store sides, you've got GrowGen and all these other grow stores out there. It seems like their business has changed. The comment that JR's made is that grow stores are just soil depots now for some folks. But what are your thoughts on kind of the current state of, especially on the grow store side of things? Because that's, a lot of us on the home grower sides, we still might go to a GrowGen every once in a while or whatever it is.
The GrowGens are, the stores are holding it down. Right now it's man, Chris and I up here in Michigan, when in 2009, if you didn't own a hydro store, you weren't cool. everyone was trying to open up a store, everyone was trying to open up a line, everyone was trying to open up something and get a hold of it. And now you can drive around and see empty buildings, commercialized cannabis, totally devastated medical cannabis. And medical cannabis is what built all the brick and mortar stores. I've been in this, selling products into this industry since before 2008. And, just before. My background before this, I was a grower, but I was an electrician. And, so I always had access to, all these old gymnasium 1,000 waters and all that stuff. But, the more I look into it, and, my first grow was ballast strapped to the bottom of floor joists. We all did what we had to do in the evolution of this industry. It went from being worried that your neighbors are going to call because their cable was scrambled to.
Oh, I hated that one. Hated that one. I told Comcast to piss up a rope like 4 or 5 different times. They were so. Oh, it was good. It was fun.
The introduction of electronic ballast. I don't know if you all remember. I got a paperweight back there. It was one of the original ones, and there was 3 different companies slinging the same ballast, and it was just a different colored anodized aluminum.
Yeah, right.
And 2 of us became Luminar Lighting together. Right. I'll tell you one thing. The great thing about this industry is it's brought people together, and I've made lifetime friends that live on the other side of the world that have been business partners. But man, it's definitely changed. Chris knows the pains of it. Chris as well used to be a hydro store, and fell into the rep game, and became this soil whiz.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads us into the next question, and that's kind of like trade shows are kind of dead now. And so what are your guys' strategies for getting your brand in front of other people's faces?
Wow, good question. I love the trade shows. That's actually
Bro, Indo Expo was the greatest. I love that show.
I was the first booth for years when you walked in that door.
Yeah, loved it.
Then when I was at Luminar.
Yeah,
I miss Chris to death.
Me too. And I'm really sad that whole. You know what I feel like is when that whole thing went down, that was the end of trade shows. It was like from that moment on, they tried the neat cans here and there, and they were good as they're popping off in new states, but there was nothing like that. The one show I went to though that I thought was amazing was the very first and second Cowboy Cup in Oklahoma. That was like enjoying cannabis on another level because they had like beer trucks and you could walk around.
New to them too. Oklahoma was fun when that first opened up. That was a fun market. The first CannaCon over there, the excitement on everybody's faces, and I really enjoyed getting out there. And it was the Cowboy Cups were fun. Right up to the point where they have to make an announcement the product was too dirty.
Yeah, that was a whole wild thing. That whole just having the ganjiers out there, because they're Northern California, kind of hippie folks, and Oklahoma ain't about that lifestyle.
Yeah,
and so
like Midwest
Swami,
versus the West Coasters or whatever.
And when Swami got on the stage, man, it was just like they were not vibing with that. And then they said everybody's shit was dirty. It did not go over well. I think that was the death of that show, to be honest with you. I don't think it went like it's not even a consumption event anymore. It's in Tulsa or some shit.
Wow.
But let's kind of move into talking sales a little bit. I noticed one of the trends with companies now is they're not really hiring employees, but having folks come on as like an affiliate program where they're just on a percentage of sales. Can you kind of talk about why you think that's happening?
You're talking like brands are bringing on sales reps like that?
Yeah, just kind of basically offering them an affiliate program. I'm imagining a percentage in a 1099. You know, what you sell is what you get.
I've done that, and I still do it for a few companies, and honestly, the manufacturer is the only person that benefits from it. Um, that's why I wear this hat today. Man, I'm staring at their sticker right now. I mean, a company I worked with for a while really disappointed me during COVID, dropped the ball and never getting a checkout to me, and then lied and complained to me for months that they got the checkout. And, so where are they at now? Well, they're down 2 salespersons and they lost every one of those accounts,
Yeah.
And so, it's, as far as if you're going to take care of somebody's company and that's bringing them the business, in the end, a lot of these customers, that I work with are a lot of them are people I sold lights to, right? So I sold them a light and I build a relationship with you. I sell you a light, we build up a friendship. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I got a little bro issue. I don't know if it has anything to do with my lights, but I want to call Scott. And I'd be like, shit, man, you just need a little bit of this, little magic dust on it, whatever. We solve your problem. So it became more like, well, all of a sudden I like call up a friend like, hey, man, we're losing a sale because like I could recommend your product and all that shit, but in the long run, I'm not getting a nickel for it. So why waste my time? Or,
Yeah.
but I want to take care of the customer in the end. So, cut me an affiliate or something. But then in the end, nothing really comes of it, or they're short period lifetimes. So I'm like, here, give me access to your product. Let me become a drop
Well,
shipper for me.
Do you think offering the affiliate program makes them a little more hungry and work a little harder?
It gets more people out there to filtering out sales. I'll say that much.
More boots on the ground.
More boots on the ground. I run into people that, when I was sales manager of Illuminar, I ran into a guy in my own territory, in my own state, that claimed to have had more power over the company I managed. I didn't even know who the guy was. He had a business card and everything. I thought it was funny, but he went out and printed them off himself. So
Well, I will say this too, and I just we can move on a little bit after that. I've got a lot of friends in their 50s and 60s and who have dedicated their entire life to this industry, their adult lives, and many of them their kids' young lives. And I see a lot of those guys aren't doing really well. It's like at some point I worry, about these guys being able to pivot and stay relevant and stay busy. Can you kind of give any tips out there for some of us older guys?
I mean, I'll say this. This is why people like me and Chris exist. We see people gouge and, promise the world and underdeliver, or they, sell undervalued products and there's too much hype out there and customers are, getting the value for the product that they're paying for in the long run. You want to grow better product for less, you can contact people like Chris and I, and that's what we do. We set up gardens for success. Him and I work together. We work with other people as well that we can give you a value added product in the end. People are going to come back. They're going to mention your name. Hey, this guy's smoke was good. It's not, doesn't have just the bag appeal. It's got bag appeal and terpenes. I'm an old school smoke, man. I mean, I'm sitting here smoking OG Kush. You know what I mean? I don't jump into all this new hype stuff. I mean, some of it's good, but I mean, I smoked old school stuff. I don't know. I'm in my 50s. I stay in that. I'm in that range too, and I want to grow the best quality product with good quality, clean products, where I don't feel like I'm getting stabbed in the back.
Yeah, it's tough. And so, like you guys are doing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you do got to stay pretty fluid in this industry, in a tight time like this where you have different opportunities. Unfortunately, there isn't really a whole lot of long-term projection right now, even, you know what I mean? So it's like trying to find something solid, is a tough gig for anybody right now. But, maintaining integrity, being a man of your word, going above and beyond out of your way, and, getting to know the people in the industry go a long ways, and that's how I try to operate.
Yeah, yeah, word. I like that. So if you could kind of, Scott, give us kind of the scope and skill set required to be a modern day sales rep in the cannabis industry.
Oh boy. That's like it goes back to the question you said, how do we get a hold of it in front of the other people, the people
Yeah,
now? You know,
yeah,
it's opportunities like this. You know, how many people am I reaching out to that I haven't spoken to? I've been on other shows before, and I haven't always been Farm First. As Farm First Horticulture, this is my first one. Thank you.
hey, thank you. We appreciate that, man.
And
We
I
really
hope to
do.
come back and bring more of the people I work with. I work with a lot of great companies, you know, other people like Chris in other regions, because you know what? I can't just come over to Oregon and knock on a door and take care of a customer, but I got people I trust to go in there and do it for me. You know,
Yeah,
like, I mean, Chris and I are in Michigan together, but we're on opposite sides of the state, but we can cover a lot more territory working together. You know, when we're trying to solve one of our customers' problems, you
yeah,
know, if I can't solve it and he can't solve it, we have other teammates that can with their products. So, in everything we work with, are the cleanest natural inputs and products we can get our hands on. And the reason we work with these other companies, because they provide the best quality products for the best quality price. That's what it's all
yeah,
That's another
for us.
thing that happened in this industry is just too much came out. Like this
yeah,
shit blew up, and all of a
yeah,
sudden there's dispensaries everywhere and grow shops everywhere and companies everywhere and salesmen everywhere. But the shit is starting to settle out. And Scott and I, we've been in the game long enough that we know what works. And we're not bullshitting people. And you guys, see that in the industry too. It's like where certain things just aren't needed. So you got to try
yeah,
to be in a position where you got things people need.
yeah, yeah. Especially in the picks and shovels kind of side of things, because when we were balling and getting all that money for all that weight, we didn't mind throwing down for a little extra this, that magic sauce. But now things are lean, and so you got to, like you said, kind of cater to what people are really getting down with.
Yep.
Yep. And you got to know what at the same time, the customers in the end, are getting good quality smoke. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to cheat and do all this other stuff that people are trying to do it to compete, because they're trying to cut these corners and make money when there's ways that they don't have to do it. A lot of people, when they have pest problems or mold problems, go through expensive remediation costs. How much? I mean, honestly, you know what I mean? Just, if you got a powdery mildew issue, call somebody who knows how to take care of it. There's people like us that do consulting and can teach you and show you how to do it with good quality products. And at the same time, it also helps teach you something about cleaning and learning habits and better gardening habits.
Yeah, because a lot of people who are in the industry now who are actually growing the plant, many of those people are on a kind of like either in debt terribly or in a crop to crop kind of basis. And
Yep.
so having an epic failure in a testing situation or something like that could really cost them a lot, a lot, a lot.
Just a quick story. A brand new grower, his story when he got to me was he learned from a guy sitting in an airport who introduced him to another guy, where he ended up down at area 420 for a short period of time. And when he came, from a friend, called me and said, listen, I want to run all organics, and I'm using living beds, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I turned him right over to the Farm First organic line, and it was his third run in all total ever in life, and it came out really good. The next run came out spectacular, and everything he had, a local rap star. She's very local to her area, very well known. She came through there and videoed it, and he's kind of blown up just because of what he's doing, and living beds, not the easiest thing to do, but we got this thing figured out. And, you know, he's killing it. And it's very inexpensive to do what he's doing.
Yeah, that kind of also talks kind of a little bit about, you know, getting your face and your story out there for your branding and building your brand. You know, avenues like this, you know, we have 1,000 at least people who are going to listen to you talk for an hour. You know, if you went to a trade show and you got a booth, you know, how much would it cost you to have 1,000 people walk by and listen to you talk for an hour?
And these people, but your customers are focused. They want to hear me. You know,
They're all
these
nine
guys aren't necessarily, you know, they might be in there looking for something they don't know existed when they walk by and hear one of our pitches. You know, whereas like everybody here, I'd love to come back and answer more questions. I'm sure Chris would too. I mean, this is what you know, the two of us really do best is, you know, turn solutions into sales and sales into solutions. And you know, it's for us, I mean, it's a way of monetizing how what we're doing as far as consulting to people that are having grow problems, or, you know, maybe like they're dealing with constant you know, food shortages, you know, their deficiencies or something all the way through. You know, we can figure these things out and steer them in the right direction, whether they want to run my nutrients or not, or if we're just, you know, figuring out how to supplement their food program.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, we'd definitely be happy to have you guys back on the show to talk about all things soil and all sorts of things.
Lighting.
But before we let you guys go, I guess my last question would be essentially, I think we kind of boil it down to what kind of tip, maybe let's see, 1 or 2 tips that you could give folks that are maybe interested in getting into the sales side of the industry or kind of starting out of the industry, or maybe they're kind of newish in the gig and they're trying to figure out, how do I build relationships or kind of tackle this new territory that I've been given?
Keep it organic, keep it real. You know, don't push things. You know, it's, you know, this for me, this isn't going to happen overnight. Tomorrow, I'm not going to be a success story because I was on the CannaBuzz podcast last night. You know what I mean?
Word.
And if I am, I'm buying it. We're all going. I know how to share it.
Hey, bro, if it translates to 1 sale, I'll be stoked.
Oh, dude, it's going to translate to more than that. You know, we're building a bond right here, and you know, hopefully, you know, we get a couple of your customers that want to follow our programs. You know, It's very simple. You know, like him and I both, you know, like I said, we met at a trade show. This man was sitting in a wheelchair and he stood up in front of me and shocked the hell out of me because you don't normally see that, right?
Yeah.
And you know, it goes back to he broke his back. I'm going to tell a story fast. And you know, he broke his back, used a little bit of CBD, a little cannabis, you know, to help, you know, get through all the situation. And you know, he was out there selling soils, but at the same time, he had all kinds of, you know, topicals and other things because it worked for him.
Yeah. I have Dit's amazing. I've incorporated Dit to Jow with coconut and CBD isolate and emu oil. And it's basically a topical that I'm offering out to people because I think topicals are one of the underrated, underutilized aspects of what the cannabis plant brings to the table.
Absolutely. Yeah. I use topicals on a daily basis to this day.
Same.
And
Dude,
on the terms of, go ahead.
I'm going to shoot you a recipe. And if not, just incorporate Dit de Jow into it's a tincture that was developed by the Shaolin monks for vascular healing and for anti-inflammatory. So it's like bruise control. So it's like super good for after you've been working hard all day. And it's also good for like people who have neuropathy, problems with blood pressure issues, you know, that kind of stuff like that, where they're having, you know, problems in their lower extremities. But man, even just adding that Dit de Jow, I'm telling you, it'll it'll really bring the efficacy level of your topical up quite a bit. And I'm actually going to be sending some out to Scott here for him to try out, for some post-workout stuff. And, if you're interested, just hit me up. I'd be glad to send you a jar as well.
Yeah. I could try it through Scott. I get to link up with Scott every month or so. So
oh, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
excellent.
Chris, what was your tip, your pro tip?
Oh, I was going to say, so my slogan is farmers helping farmers, growing by example. So you talk about sales calls, there's a lot of people. And one thing about this industry is we can see a faker, right? And so you got to be real with what you do. If you want to be in this sales game, you got to come at it from sort of a real perspective. We're connected to this community through in and throughout, from what we grow to what we produce to how these medicines work and what it's doing for all these people around us, And I think that if you got good intentions and your heart is in the right place, and obviously you got some work ethic behind you and some integrity, that goes a long ways. So.
Well, like we said earlier in the show, the turds kind of float to the top. They get easily recognized. Well, we really appreciate your time. Can you both kind of give final shout outs as to where people can find your websites and get access to your products?
Yeah, I can be reached at info@farmfirsthort.com. My website's farmfirsthort.com as well. It's just right now we're working out a little e-commerce bugs right now, but it'll be back up in a couple hours. And then you can always reach me out on Instagram at ffh_Scott.
Yeah, and all my business information is at Country Roots Ltd, for Country Roots Limited short. We only work with quality organic stuff. So I'm Country Roots Ltd on social media, and then my website is countryroots.ltd.com.
Nice. And so, Chris, go ahead and give us a rundown, just some basics, products that people can find on your site.
The main thing that we work with is soil building. So trying to help people maintain their soils and build their soils or correct their soils. We could work with a soil test or do analysis and interpretations for people and give you, great feedback. All the stuff that we work with, I keep it very affordable. We sell all our amendments by the pound and things like that. So you could come on and just spend a couple of dollars and get a little bit of gypsum or a little bit of this and that.
Love it.
Yeah, so try to keep it straightforward that way. Also do some liquid inputs, got a couple pest management things and a few different soil blends. Soil, I always say I'm sorry that soil shipping costs so much. I wish, I look forward to figuring out a way to ship soil a lot cheaper, but it really doesn't make sense to ship a lot of soil, to be honest. Unless if you're building a bed, I could see people justify it because you get a really badass soil that you can put into your bed and you're going to grow in that soil for years. So if it costs you a couple $100 for shipping, it's worth it, if you got a good soil. And we've been growing in our soil for over 4 years and a lot of different soil beds. But yeah, I try to keep things as affordable as I can. And, people can reach out direct and, we could try to come up with the cheapest option for you. I build custom mineral packs and worm casting packs. So if you can find some peat cocoa perlite sources in your area, then we got some amendments and things that we can help you build the soil from there.
That's actually a huge resource for a lot of our listeners because we've got like folks in Ohio, their access to bagged soil or even a shop isn't really that great. And so if they can get some of the basics to where they could get some of these amendment packs or get some of these amendments from you to be able to build their living soil, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, the majority of the weight is absolutely in the peat, cocoa, and perlite. I could send you 5 pounds of minerals and that'll go quite a ways. Or even more than that, you could do a 20-pound flat rate box. That's a lot of minerals in a 20-pound box,
Yeah. We'll definitely have to have you because we have most of our audience is growers, so they love when we talk about nerd out about soil and all kinds of stuff. So we'll definitely have to bring you guys back on the show. But thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone in the audience who's been watching. I've been watching the chat. We've had several folks that joined us on the live stream in our members only community on CannaBuzz. We had Little Nugs, Crazy Pop Mom, Richard joined, Mike, Pollyanna Buzzed, a bunch of others. So thanks everyone who joined us over on CannaBuzz. If you want to support us over there, we'd love to see you. And then also shout out to everyone on YouTube or Spotify or any podcast app. Leave a comment over there. We'd love to see your comments. Let us know what you think. But thanks, Scott. Thanks, Chris. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
And
thank you very much. Good show.
We hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And as always, JR.
Growers love.
Growers love, everyone. Peace.